Welcome to the Atomic Real Estate Show, Philadelphia's #1 real estate podcast and a Direct Subs production. Real estate investing is not rocket science, and on our show, we'll delve into best practices with a focus on the small things that add up over time. Please enjoy the authentic, informative, and actionable show with our host, Paul Jagielski.
Thank you for joining us today on the Atomic Real Estate Show. I am Paul Jagielski, and I'm your host. I have a special guest for myself today. He is one of my mentors. He happens to be my team leader as well. His name is Keith Adams. He's the team leader of the Adams Group at Compass. Keith, you have helped countless amounts of people in their real estate journey over the years, from buyers and sellers looking to navigate the real estate market to new agents and investors such as myself, and not to mention your relationship that you have formed with seasoned real estate investors over the years. But on top of all of that, you run a fantastic team and are incredibly involved with your family and the community as well. So before we dive into today's topic with you, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for joining me on the Atomic Real Estate Show. And if you could, please tell us a little bit about what makes you you.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate all the kind words. I do really appreciate it. I'm the team leader for the Adams Group with Compass. I've been in the real estate business for about 18 years now. We have a team of 7 agents on the team. We sell about $50 million in real estate a year. And what really makes it worth it and special is just to help clients, to help buyers, to help sellers, to get them into homes that they live in forever, to help them sell the houses and move on to their next, journey in life. So it's just a rewarding business in terms of just meeting a lot of great people and helping them out. And my philosophy is always to look at the big picture and to do what is best for my clients. And once I do what's best for my clients, it's going to come back to me and help me in business in terms of referrals and repeat clients. So I'm super glad you're on the team, and I appreciate all the great words, and loving the podcast so far.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, definitely. You 100% do strive to exceed all of your clients' expectations, and that's something that drew me to you instantly. You are somebody that is willing to, as you say, look at the big picture. You don't just turn people away. You try and help them. You try and figure out their overall, and then figure out how you can actually help them in there. And one of the coolest things that I've seen on my time with you and before was your ability to work with investors. And it kind of brought something into my life where I was like, that's really cool. So I became an agent and I became an investor myself. And a lot of that came with your guidance. So I want to talk to you today about investing a little bit more in depth than we normally do. Considering you have worked with so many over the years, brand new ones, seasoned ones, suburbs and city, you've kind of covered it all. But to me, I really want to know what it is that is the common denominator for the successful investors. What do they do to be and stay successful?
That's a great question. I always tell investors, and especially new investors, there are 3 things you need to have to be successful. 1 is real estate knowledge, 2 is financing, and 3 is a good contractor. So if we start with 1, that's real estate knowledge. And that can be, the investor can have the real estate knowledge, or the investor should have a very good realtor that they can lean on in terms of what should you be buying that property for? What should you be expecting to sell the property for? There's a lot of investors that, they kind of dive into the market. They may know it well, but they overpaid for the property, or they might go in and have a resale value that's too high for the market. So what I tell those investors are, either you should really dig in deep to the market, get a good feel for where you're going to invest, or hire a realtor and work hand in hand with that realtor. because when investing, and especially let's say maybe for a flip, investors make most of their money on the purchase.
Yes.
So you need to, right? You need to make sure you purchase it for the right price. Because you've seen it, Paul. You've seen a lot of people overpay for a property, and now they're already behind the 8 ball when they're getting ready to put more money into it.
Yeah. What do you want? The $500 sink or the $50 one? But you paid too much. So I guess you're getting a $50 sink.
Exactly. You paid too much. And then also a problem that investors get into is they didn't consult a realtor of what they can sell it for after all the work is complete.
So
they'll buy it for 200, they'll put 100 into it, and they'll make a gauge on what they can sell for based on what they invested, as opposed to talking to a realtor, running the comps, looking at what comparable properties has sold for on the street and in the area, and then coming up with a realistic price range of what you can sell it for.
Yeah. And you brought up another good point out of there with that real estate agent. They're going to give you comps of sales, and those comps of sales are going to have a couple different pieces of information in there. And one that a lot of people forget is it costs the seller money to sell.
Right. Exactly. Some investors don't know the commission. They may not be up to date with the transfer tax or taxes or holding costs. So there are a lot of costs involved besides just what you bought it for and how much you're putting into it.
Yeah.
And then another important part of that, Paul, is you need to work with a realtor to understand what your market is looking for. So the house that you're working on, should you convert that from a 4-bedroom to a 3-bedroom? What are the finishes that the buyers in that market are expecting? Yes. Are you putting laminate floors in the main floor, or are you putting hardwood floors? Are you putting quartz countertops or granite? So you really need to have that knowledge of that market of what can the house sell for and what should you put into it? What is the buyer expecting to get out of it? And what should the finished product look like?
So as an investor, I don't want to make it what I want.
Exactly. And we hear that all the time. We'll see investors buy a property, they fix it up, and then when they have a realtor to come meet them, the realtor may say, why did you choose this, or why did you choose that? And they might say, this is what I like, or this is what I prefer. But their taste is maybe a lot different from the buyer and their market. So
you got to sell to those masses.
You have to sell this to the masses. You don't want to specialize on that property, and you definitely want to, just have a good feel. You want that property to appeal to as many people as possible, and that's where you depend on a realtor to guide you.
Yeah. So real estate knowledge, huge. I would probably say that's number one out of all of it, because it's going to roll right into what you said, number two, which was that financing. Now, when you speak financing, tell me a little bit about that.
So financing, you would have, 2 options. When you're writing an agreement on a property, are you waiving the mortgage contingency? And essentially it's called a cash offer. Or are you going to have an offer that's contingent on financing? So ideally, for an investor, you want to be able to write an offer that's not contingent on financing. That's going to make your offer a lot stronger. That's going to be a lot more appealing to the seller. And usually in these situations, when you're dealing with properties that are maybe in disrepair, the sellers are usually looking for a quick settlement. And if you don't have your financing lined up, you're not going to be able, your offer is not going to be appealing to the seller. And also, depending on your financing, that's going to dictate what type of property you can look at. So, for example, you really want to be able to buy a property that's not contingent on financing. And that's either you have the cash yourself, maybe you get a line of credit from a bank, maybe you have a partner that's financially strong that can bring cash to the table. That's ideally what you want to do, because that way you can settle quickly, so your offer is going to be strong. and you can buy any type of property. So if it's dilapidated, if it's a shell, if it's a teardown, you can buy it and you're not at the mercy of the bank to say if they would lend on it or not.
Interesting.
So to the other side of that is some investors, they don't have the resources to waive their mortgage contingency. So they may be getting a loan from a bank. And if you're getting a loan from a bank, the house can't be in total disrepair. It has to be livable.
Right.
So you're going to need a house the kitchen is going to have to be intact. They are going to send an appraiser out. They're going to walk through the property. They're going to make sure there's a range in the kitchen. They're going to make sure it's livable right there. So that investor should be looking at houses that, are maybe tired cosmetically, need a facelift, but not something where you're going to have to go in and replace all the joists, or there's a missing roof, or there's no kitchen in place. So it's very important for investors to do that legwork up front, because what you don't want to do is go out, look for a property, find a very good property that's a good fit for you, and then say, hey, I need a few days to figure out my financing. Right? Because what happens in the meantime? The property is going to sell.
Oh yeah, I'm going to come in there and I'm going to swoop that up.
And you need to do that legwork up front, because I've seen a lot of investors in the market right now to find an investment property. It's very competitive. So you have to be able to act on it quickly when you see a property. And if you see something that you like, that's a good fit, the numbers will work, and it's priced well, you can't go back and say, all right, let me talk to my bank, or let me talk to my partner, or yes, I can do it. I probably need 45 to 60 days to close. That's not going to work. Those sellers are going to find another investor that's going to come in, probably cash, 2 to 3 week close, and you just lost it. And maybe you've been looking for 6 months and you missed out on a golden opportunity.
Keith, you mentioned something now a couple times in that one that I want you to drill down on too. Waiving of the mortgage contingency / cash offer.
Yes.
Does that mean I have to have, it's a $200,000 house. Does that mean I have to have $200,000 right here, right now in my hand to give to you as soon as you sign that document?
No, and that's a misconception. A lot of people think a cash offer means that you're bringing all cash to the table. Really, what a cash offer means is that you waived the mortgage contingency. So your offer is not contingent on getting a mortgage, but you can still get a mortgage if you would like. And also what a lot of these buyers may do is, maybe they have a line of credit on their property, or they have a partner, or they can go to a hard money lender who is a little bit, operates differently from a bank, where they can settle quickly. They don't need it to be as great of condition. The only trade-off would be that their interest rates would be higher than a normal bank, and they would charge you points on the loan. So to answer your question, no, you're not going to probably walk to the settlement table with $200,000 in cash. It just means that you're not contingent on getting a mortgage.
Right. And now that contingency, to break that down for those who don't understand it, it is something that it's putting an extra layer of question into the involvement. So if I'm going to offer you $50 to take right here, right now, but you have to give me a high five, that's a contingency. No contingency would be, I'll give you $50 right here, right now.
Correct.
So when Keith is talking about that contingency, waiving it and having the mortgage waived out of it means that the bank, there's no third person. There's nobody else coming in and putting their opinion on the price. You've already distinguished that price with the seller as the buyer, and that's what you're willing to pay out of it. That's awesome. So that's a great way for investors to strengthen it. And I also want to talk about your third part of it, which is the contractors.
Yes. So and that kind of ties in with your major contingencies. Your major contingencies when making an offer is your mortgage contingency or having a contingent on inspections. Yeah. And the same thing, when you're buying an investment property that's in disrepair, you are going to need to waive your inspections, or you'll want to waive your inspections for it to be a strong offer. And this is where it helps to you want to have a good contractor lined up. And the important things to having a good contractor is they work within the time frame that you have. They work within your budget. And it's great to have a contractor ready to go, because if you see a property that you like, you can bring them through and walk through.
Ooh.
So when you're and this is nice, because when investors walk through and they see a property, they're usually estimating or ballparking what it's going to cost them to renovate the property, and maybe from experience or what people have told them. But if they have their contractor with them, they'll have a very good, accurate number when they go into the project of what it's going to cost them.
Interesting. So they're going to get a leg up before anybody else just by doing that one extra step right there.
Exactly. And a couple of those things that's important about a contractor is timing. You need a good contractor who's going to stay within that time frame, because if you expect it to take 6 months and it takes 9 months, and now you're hitting the market in the fall as opposed to the spring and summer, that's a big difference. And you're probably going to sell the property for less than what you expected because you put it on at the wrong time.
Yeah. I know me and you were just talking about rentals too. So even if it wasn't a flip and it was just something that they're trying to hold, and 6 months would put you right near in the beginning or the end of the summer, and all of a sudden 3-month delay puts you into the winter time, you ain't going to get that rent roll that you were expecting.
Exactly. Rentals, the rental and sales market, you want to list those in the spring, early summer. That is the best time. If you miss that and you're listing a sale or rental in the fall or winter, you're definitely going to get less.
Would you say then most of your investors are picking up properties during that slow time in the winter, cold months, where those sellers must be desperate or something to be selling during that time?
I wish that was the case. I wish we were always buying properties and it was lined up perfectly for the spring, but that's never the case. And opportunities always come up at different times. And sometimes that it's going to get finished in December, and then you have to weigh the decision. Do you want to list it in December, or do you want to wait a couple months and put it on in the spring? But you are going to be buying properties at all different times. All different projects have different time frames. So ideally, if you could list it in the spring and summer, I try to, but that's not how it always works out. But what I do let my investor know is, hey, if this is a 9-month, flip, we're going to come out in December. Our projected out sale should be a little bit lower. This is where I think we should be. And I don't want to use that comp in the spring, and our expectations should be a little bit lower based on timing.
Man, this goes right back to your first point, getting a good real estate agent that understands the market.
Exactly.
So even as an investor that I'll use myself as an example, I'm an agent and an investor. Just because I happen to carry both titles doesn't mean I necessarily know the exact zip code that I'm looking in to buy this next investment property. Even I should be reaching out to a real estate agent that specializes in that area to get all these extra numbers.
You should, because also some people will use comps. If they're going to list in the winter, they may use comps in the spring, and that's not a good valid comparison. So you definitely want to work with a realtor who knows that area well. They know the differences between the markets. They have a good feel for the average days on market. They can let you know the trends in that area. Is it trending up? Is it trending down? What's the demographic of your buyer or renter? And you want to appeal to them in terms of finishes and maybe the size, bedroom count, bathroom count. So you definitely want to work with someone who knows it, and you don't want to guess. There's too much involved to just guess.
Right. Yeah. And as you said, that purchase price is going to determine whether or not you make money on this or not. So guessing at that number is not a fun number to be guessing at. And that's a lot to be lost out of it.
And also with that, Paul, is you're carrying it. Right when you settle, you have expenses. You have carrying costs. Yeah. So if you're carrying it for an extra 3 months, that's going to add up. That's maybe 2,000, 2,500, 5,000 that you weren't expecting.
What would you say out of the three that you gave, the real estate knowledge, the financing, and the contractors? What's my step one? Who do I want to find first? What do I want to concentrate on?
I think you should try to tackle all three of them at the same time.
Okay.
That's
fair.
I would definitely reach out to a realtor early on in the process. And it's great to reach out to a realtor with the financing part already in place. So maybe financing is number one.
Okay.
Because a realtor really can't start working with you or doesn't want to spend too much time showing you properties until that financing is in place.
Gotcha.
So I say if an investor developer has all three of those in line, they're going to do great. They're ready to go and they will be successful. If they have two out of the three, that's fine. A realtor can help find a contractor. A realtor can help place you with the right people for financing. So two of the three, you're going to do okay. If you don't have any of the three or one of the three, that's tough. And you have a lot of legwork to start doing. And also, Paul, to touch on the contractor part, a big part of that is budget.
Yes.
So you need a contractor who's going to stay within the budget. If you're budgeting 150 and the contractor comes in at 200, that might be all your profit right there.
Right.
So that contractor has to be available right when you purchase the property. They have to work within the budget and they have to work within your time frame. And they also need to give you a good product to sell.
Yeah. So Keith, that's actually a phenomenal point. I didn't even think about that point. I mean, you don't want to just hire any contractor. You go out there and you're trying to, flip a house, say from 200 and sell it in the 500s that the comps are going for. And you hire a contractor, you let them do what they do. And then you come back right before it's about to get listed and you realize you have a rental on your hands, not a $500,000 house. That's a phenomenal point.
Exactly. And some people, they may want to use their uncle or a neighbor or a friend, and you've never seen their work. And then as the work's getting finished, the finishes are sloppy. And that's going to hurt you because a good agent or a buyer who's been on the market and looking at a lot, they are going to be able to say, hey, this doesn't look as good as the competition. This is a inferior product. And we're going to base our offer on that, or we're not even going to make an offer because it doesn't look like it was built well. And that is always a major concern with a buyer is who is the investor, who is the contractor, and was this work done well? Right.
I can't tell you how many times buyers have asked me if they can tell if it's a flip, trust me. And they've asked me, who is the developer? Do you know this person? Do they have a website? And as an agent, I do as much back checking as I can into those developers and those flippers, because it is true. They don't necessarily make these houses into homes. They just quote unquote make them look better.
Exactly.
Other investors, there are people out there that truly make houses into homes for the next person to come in. And those are what you want to look for. And as you said, it is clear as day when you walk into one of these things and you're like, the photos made this look so much better. Because up close, the grout is bad. The tiles are wavy. Contracting is a huge one.
Yep.
Now, when you put all three of these together and you've got yourself a nice little package, say maybe I hired a real estate agent, I've got my bank financing. I know what I can do. I know what I can't do. I've got all my financials printed out as well. I've got a contractor that I trust and know, and I'm keeping it out of the family. I've got them all wrapped up. I come to Keith and I go, now I'm ready to invest. Where do I go?
where do we go? So the next thing I would talk to them and say, where do you want to invest?
Okay.
These are the areas that I'm comfortable with. These are the areas that I know well. But you also want to try to invest in an area that is close to the investor developer, for travel time, an area close to their contractor for travel time, and just where they're comfortable working. So that's the next step is then we talk about the location. Once we kind of figure out a couple of locations, then we go out and start looking at properties And that's where I start to show investors properties that I think are appealing and that have caught my eye. Or investors also do, and developers do a lot of legwork also in terms of finding the property. And that's where they'll reach out to me and say, Keith, I have a lead on this property. Can we go walk through it together? I want you to give me your thoughts on what we can sell it for, and if it's a good number. And that's where we get started.
Keith, I know you have moved inside the city, outside the city, suburbs, different counties here and there with these investors that you work with. How are the laws? How are working with the townships to be able to, say, split a plot up or add a gas line into the house? What is that kind of work? Or is that something the investor's taking care of, their agents taking care of, the contractor?
That should be something that the investor and the developer should be working hand in hand on.
Okay. So they want to know, they should
be an architect, or they should be going to the township or the city. Those are some things that realtors know, but that's not our areas of expertise. So that is something that the buyer should be working on. Sometimes they even hire a zoning attorney. So that's the legwork that they should be doing. And that's not something that's our expertise. And we can give you ideas and thoughts, but we can't, vouch for it.
I like how you said that, because I get asked all the time, can you call this zoning place? Can you call this township and ask if I can build a garage? What am I allowed to do here? And that's the best advice I've heard out of it. I didn't even know that there was people that you could hire to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, there could be a lot of miscommunication there. So if we're looking at a piece of land in the city, we may go by the lot square footage and go by the zoning and say, we might be able to build 4 condos here. We might be able to build 6, but you need to double check this with the city. You need to double check with your architect. And then once they double check and confirm, then we feel confident moving forward.
That's cool. That's really, really cool. So you really work with your investors hand in hand all the way through from start to finish. You don't let anything kind of go by the wayside.
No, start to finish. I want to be involved in the very early process in terms of talking about the layout, talking about finishes, talking about price. That's something I want to be involved in the whole time, because there's a lot of things that go into it of, the trend and the buyer. Should this be a 2-bedroom condo or a 3-bedroom condo? Does this need outdoor space? Are condos that are 1,000 square feet, are they selling, or does it need to be larger? Can it be smaller? What's the buyer expecting for the appliance package? So those are all things that I want to advise them on. And that's the best relationships I have, is that with my developers, investors, is that we're always talking. We're always bouncing ideas off each other. And so when we do have the finished product, we feel comfortable and feel like we've been on top of the trends and feel like we're ready to go, and we can sell it quickly, and there will be no surprises.
That's awesome. Keith, have you ever developed your own condo unit?
I have.
Sounds
over
like
the years. Yeah, over the years, I've done flips. I've fixed up houses and rented them. I've had triplexes built, single family houses built, and have either held them or rented them out. So I know the process very well from just helping people, but also doing it myself.
Yeah. Sounds like you have 18 hands into one cookie jar.
Yeah. I try. I love to do it. I love that part of finding properties that are dilapidated and need some love or fixing up, or areas that are changing. I love to get in early and then, get in there and put my touch on it, change it up, fix it up, and, bring value to the neighborhoods and, get buyers in there, but also it's income. So I love it. I think it's a great business and it's fun.
That's so cool. And now you said 50 million on average is what you are selling through the Adams Group right now. 18 years of experience. Do you have an idea of how many millions you've been involved with over the 18 years?
I think maybe it's around, maybe 400, 500 million in sales. And I'd probably say, Paul, maybe 30 to 40% of our sales are with investors and developers. That's kind of a niche that we've developed over the years of that, we know well and are constantly on the lookout for properties and land that are a good opportunity for our clients.
That's awesome. Yet again, one of the reasons, ladies and gentlemen, why I was drawn to the Adams Group. Keith, I'm going to wrap up here with a couple quick questions here for you. Just, feel free to answer them off the top of your head, whatever comes to mind out of it.
Yep.
But once we finish those, I'm going to ask you for a quote as well.
Okay.
But what is something that you would tell your younger self to do now or then that you didn't do earlier?
That's a good question. I don't have anything that I haven't done myself, but what I tell a lot of people, and this was advice that I was given at an early age, was when you're young to buy properties. So I got into real estate when I was 24 and was around a lot of good realtors and a lot of realtors with a lot of experience, realtors that were older. And they all told me was, hey, listen, I wish when I was earlier, I bought properties. And I took that to heart. I was young. I was 24. I did have one property at the time. And that's something that I try to stay on top of. And that's something I tell all young people now is, okay, if you need to rent for a year or two when you get out of school or whatever, you rent, but be prepared to buy a property. And then I would have a game plan of, buy a property once every year or once every 3 years or 5 years, whatever it is. But that is advice that I did take when I was younger and I do give to everyone now.
That's awesome advice. I too wish I started a little bit earlier in my life when I was in my 20s. But yeah, that's the best thing I tell people as well. What is something?
I have one other thing, Paul.
Yeah.
I also tell people, or this is advice, to start small. A lot of people want to get right into it, and think that they just want to go from 0 to 100.
Right.
But you need to work your way up in all areas of life, and you need to check your ego and take small tasks at first, or small jobs at first. But you just want to get used to taking a little bit out of a time and just working your way up for everything. Nothing is going to be immediate, and there is a process. And if you put the process in place and you keep working and you put your head down and work hard, it will pay off. I'm a big advocate of telling people to work hard and hustle. And it's worked for me, and it's worked for a lot of people that I'm around that I admire. It's a common trait that a lot of people have to be successful.
That it is. What is something that you implemented into your life in the past year that you weren't doing before?
Just being ultra aware to make sure you're always keeping yourself uncomfortable. So, especially in, with COVID, I think everyone got to be very comfortable. I think everyone was indoors all the time and forgot what it was like to kind of be out and challenge yourself. And I listen to David Goggins a lot and read his books.
Yeah.
And he always talks about getting comfortable being uncomfortable. So that's something that I always try to remind myself to, is to just put yourself out there, do things that kind of scare you or make you uncomfortable, and then you'll thrive from that.
Yeah. I like David Goggins a lot. He was actually one of my first Audible books that I listened to, and man, does he get you ramped up and ready to run through a brick wall.
He does. And excuses, and listening to him, I'm aware of any excuse I have, it's a lie. And
Yep.
If something wasn't done, it wasn't done because I chose not to do it. It's not that it wasn't done because of an external factor or someone else. Any excuse is just a lie to myself.
Yep, dude, David Goggins, as I said, man, he makes me want to run through brick walls. Listening
Always.
to the stuff that he was willing to put his body through just to like prove people wrong. No other reason, just to prove people wrong.
100%.
is absolutely phenomenal. If everybody wants to look up like the most pull-ups in 24 hours, I think was one of the challenges that he took on. The marathons that he's run in back-to-back days. He's Google David Goggins. He's a pretty cool guy. But so those are the little ones. Keith, I actually want to ask you a third one that I'm going to sneak in here right on top of you without any kind of previous knowledge. I want to know what you do to decompress. What is it on your daily, weekly, monthly basis that you do to just kind of go Zen moment?
I need to exercise.
Okay.
And it could be anything. It could be going to the gym. It could be a hike. It could be a run. Playing pickleball with my wife right now and friends. And that's a sport that's gaining steam. So one is exercise, and two is just spending a lot of time with my family, my wife and my two boys. So that is my way to decompress and get out of my head and just relax. So those are if I'm not working, those are the things that I'm always trying to focus on.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, you're a big family guy, and I love that about you. That's something that I strive to do, because you give back to the community, you give back to your family, you do spend a lot of time with them. And that's awesome that you can do that.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah. Thank you, Keith, for being on our show and taking the time and giving us your insight. This has truly been my pleasure in speaking with you today. I especially want to thank you for breaking down all this free information for our listeners down into little atom-sized actionable piece of advice. But before I do say goodbye to you, if you could, 1 to 2 sentences, tell our guests where and how they can reach out to you, as well as if you've got any inspirational quotes you'd like to share.
Sure. My call or text is always the best way. My cell phone's 215-605-1027. My email address is keith.adams@compass.com, or our website, adamsgroupmarket.com, and Instagram, Adams Group Market, are the best ways. But really, calling and texting me is the best way to get me.
Awesome.
And then inspirational quote.
Yeah.
This is a quote that I always like. It was a Malcolm Gladwell book called David versus Goliath. And he talks about is that you should turn your disadvantages into your advantages.
Ooh.
And I've always loved that line. And we never really think of it, things like that. And when I was starting out in real estate, I was, 24 years old. I had my real estate license, and people, the major pushback was that I was young and maybe I didn't have enough experience. But what I try to do was turn that, that disadvantage to my advantage by saying, yes, I'm young, but I'm tech savvy, I'm hungry, I'm energetic. I don't have as many clients, but I'm going to put all the energy that I have into you. I don't have many clients to pull me from you. So I've always tried to do that, where, you'll hear people say, well, I can't do this, I can't do that. And I always try to tell them to turn that disadvantage into their advantage. And it really does work when you look at it like that.
Yeah, that's cool. Turn that disadvantage into an advantage and stay uncomfortable.
Yep.
You're asking for a hurting, my man.
Yeah.
But hey, it's working, right? I mean, you're doing well, you're happy, so I can't complain about any of that for you as well. But unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for the Atomic Real Estate Show today. There's so much more actionable advice that'll be free for the taking in our upcoming episodes, so be sure to tune in next week to the Atomic Real Estate Show. Thank you again to our listeners, and especially you, Keith Adams, for being so generous with your time and insight. This has been a Direct Subs production. Please check them out at directsubs.com. I look forward to hearing from all of you in our comments. Please remember to like, share, and comment wherever you choose to listen. And I will see you next time on the Atomic Real Estate Show.
If you enjoyed our episode, please consider supporting the show by rating and reviewing the podcast. Also, check us out on Instagram at Atomic Real Estate Show to find out when new shows drop and to participate in our community Q&As. The Atomic Real Estate Show was brought to you by Direct Subs. Direct Subs is the #1 place for real estate investors to connect with local contractors for their flips, rentals, renovations, and new construction projects.